The pomegranate, apple tree, and bramble. The pomegranate and apple tree disputed as to which was the most beautiful. When their strife was at its height, a bramble from the neighboring hedge lifted up its voice and said in a boastful tone, "Pray, my dear friends, in my presence at least cease from such vain disputings." It's kind of funny, short. Uh, it's kind of funny because the pomegranate and the apple tree, these are like inanimate objects. They're like arguing. So, he's giving life. What is that called, folks? Put that in the bottom. What is it called? Um, yeah, so it's personification. So where we're personifying uh the apple tree and the pomegranate because they're not supposed to talk. They're inanimate objects. All right, so let's I think Bramble's like a horse or like a donkey. I don't know. Again, I must seem like such an idiot to certain groups. A prickly, scrambling vine or shrub, especially a blackberry or other wild shrub of the rose family. It's a plant. Interesting. I don't think it's a cocktail created in the 80s, 1980s, because this was written so long ago. I think it's a plant. Representative species, red raspberry. Okay, so interesting. All right. So now it makes sense, right? Because it's all connective. All three of these are inanimate objects. They are all plants, trees. I think the yeah the I mean you guys have eaten. I don't know if everyone has eaten pomegranate, but the pomegranate is very popular in amongst the gods. I remember this coming up a lot of times in my readings way back in the day. Um, I just remember this word that came up, pomegranate. So it's a fruit. Anyways, okay, so when their strife was okay, so they disputed as to which was the most beautiful. So this they've been personified. Well, a lot of this Aesop's fables is about personification because all these but this is another example. And these are all plants, trees. So fruit, the fruit, apple tree. So this is a uh, um, I think this is a fruit, and this is a tree, and this is a plant. So I'm thinking, is pomegranate? It is a tree. So these are all trees. Okay, so it's not the fruit. This is a fruit bearing tree. So the pomegranate is the fruit bearing tree. So they're all trees. So again, as far as memory, the reason why it's helpful, to like learn these details is because you wanna try to make connections, right? So when you're, for example, when you're writing an academic essay, or when you're, when you're trying to communicate something clearly, um, you want to see where the connections are, right? So a pomegranate is a tree, apple tree is a tree, and the bramble's a tree. I mean, it's a plant. Um, I think the bramble. So I think the bramble. So the pomegranate's a tree, apple tree's a tree, the bramble it's a vine or a shrub. Okay, so it's like a lesser version of the tree, as far as like the size and whatnot. So the vine, it's kind of funny because it makes sense too, right? Because when their strife was at its height, you're picturing like this pomegranate, which is a tree, and the apple tree, which is a tree, right? And the bramble from the neighboring hedge, right, lifted up its voice and said in a boastful tone, "Pray, my dear friends, in my presence at least cease from such vain disputings." Um, so kind of funny because if you were to like, I think compare the sizes, I'm pretty sure the pomegranate and the apple tree are like bigger than the bramble. So just visually, just thinking about this, it's a plant. It's like a vine or a shrub. So it's a rough, tangled, prickly shrub, especially the blackberry bush. But they're all kind of in the same vein. I don't know if that distinction is important or not. But anyways, um, when their strife is at its height. So when their strife, when their conflict, when their drama was at its height. So like when someone's yelling, all of a sudden one of them yells, and then the other one's yelling, and then they're both yelling really, really loud. It's like, okay, it's pretty obvious the strife is at its height, and they're banging around or whatever. They're I don't know, they're branch wrestling or whatever. But anyways, when their conflict was at its height, and like everyone around them, or all the quote unquote trees and plants around them, knew that, okay, the pomegranate and the apple tree, they're fighting over there, and it's gotten worse, and it's gotten really, really loud. A bramble from the neighboring hedge lifted up its voice. So it's the neighboring hedge. We don't know if it's so the neighboring hedge, meaning it's probably on the same plot of land, maybe in the forest, but it's neighboring, so it's adjacent, the one right next door, the hedge right next door. So lifted up his voice. Maybe it was taking a nap. Maybe it was just like watering itself. I don't know. Lifted up its voice and said in a boastful tone, in a bragging tone, in a boastful tone, "Pray, my dear friends." We hear that a lot in like old style, like dialogue. I think I'm sure like Shakespeare. Yeah. "Pray, my dear friends." Which I think is just like basically trying to get their attention. Like, hey, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like saying, hey, what's up? Excuse me. Excuse me, my dear friends. Pray, my dear friends. And again, any mistakes I make, please correct me down low, and I'll definitely I'll definitely take heed. I love continuing to learn and grow. But yeah. So pray, my dear friends, in my presence, at least cease from such vain disputings. So in my presence, like when I'm here, which is kind of funny because he's not gonna go anywhere. Like, what's he gonna do? Like he's gonna like cut his own, you know, cut his own roots out of the ground and like walk across to the next plot of land, or the next the neighbor's house, the human neighbor's house on the other side of the fence. So it's kind of funny in my presence. Like, where's he gonna go? Like, which is kind of funny because of the personification. Yeah, they're fighting, they're talking, and these are inanimate, trees, plants, but um, so that's what's kind of interesting and kind of humorous about this. In my presence, at least in my presence, in my presence, at least cease from such vain disputings. So he's essentially saying, look, never dispute about something so vain, so trivial, so banal, um, so ridiculous. It's something to argue about that's just so ridiculous. It's not worthy of arguing. Because it's vain. It means you guys are like stuck up and you're so focused on how you look. And so again, more personification, because humans are normally a lot more vain than like animals or, etc. Obviously, just as a species. So, because we have, yeah. So anyways, um, so yeah, this is kind of funny, right? It's and then it makes you think about, so as a human, our analysis, um, we want to look at we want to look at it in terms of connecting it, relating it to our own lives. Like what situation could we connect this with? Um, you know, sensory personification here. With these trees and shrubs, it's etc. What's the message here? Well, it's kind of funny because he or she is telling the pomegranate and the apple tree, um, don't and I'm not going to gender this because it's like saying, oh well, you know, it's got to be women. The pomegranate and the apple tree have to be women because only women would argue about who's most beautiful. This is not a gender story. I don't see any gendering in this story, so there's no reason for the analysis on that here. But I'm just saying from a human, if you were to connect it with like human, you know, um, human traits, it's the way I'm taking this is that uh, in my presence at least cease from such vain disputings. I think Aesop, as the writer, is sort of hinting that, like, I'm sure Aesop. It seems like Aesop, is jumping in the place of the Bramble here. That, like, the voice of reason, like we heard that phrase before a lot. The voice of reason. I think the Bramble's the voice of reason here. Um, and so yeah, I guess it's just like don't spend your time doing, having these not only being vain, but also having these vain arguments with someone over something so trivial that doesn't even matter. Like focus on real stuff, like stuff that matters. in your life, in society, and all of that, because it's petty. This is definitely pettiness and ridiculousness and just very trivial and vain, such vain disputings. Pray, my dear friends, in my presence at least cease from such vain disputings. All right, the pomegranate, apple tree, and bramble, thank you very much.